we are going to discuss the topic called as a tragedy, comedy, and tragi-comedy. Tragedy, comedy, and tragi-comedy, a study through four of the plays. What are the four plays that we will discuss in the latter part? But first thing is called as we need to know what that tragedy, comedy, and tragi-comedy, and how these are the means you can say genre, right? Uh, play the most important role in drama, right? So when you say that drama is known as one of the oldest and most powerful forms, isn't it? Powerful forms of what? Powerful forms of literature, right? So, and it reflects human emotions, desires, struggles, and also mistakes, isn't it? Emotions, desires, and mistakes in a heightened way. Since the time of Aristotle and dramatists have used plays to explore the range of human experiences through tragedy, comedy, and tragicomedy, right? And sometimes mixed up both of them or two in a tragicomedy or satirical drama, you can say. And each dramatic that form difference in tone, language, and setting, which in turn shapes the emotional impact on the audience, right? And to understand these differentiation or uniqueness present in each, that called as the distinctions, we can look at the four of the plays that form different times and the different cultures. The first one, if you talk about, one is called as a Dr. Faustus. So Dr. Faustus is again called as a one of the play or one of the drama, you can say, which is written by Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe's written Dr. Faustus, right? So second is called as William Shakespeare's As You Like It. William Shakespeare's As You Like It. And then after you would find out another one is called as Vijay Tendulkar's. What is his name? Vijay Tendulkar's written Ghasiram, uh, Ghasiram Kotwal. Ghasiram Kotwal. And another one is known as Anton Chekhov's The Bear. So these are the dramas, right? And where you would find out tragedy is there, comedy is there, and tragic comedy or satirical drama we know, right? So these plays, when studied together, it actually helps when learners to hold how tone can shift from solemn despair to witty banter, solemn despair to witty banter, and how language can be elevated or colloquial, and how settings can create either tragic tension, comic relief, or you can talk about satirical reflection. More importantly, these drama show that what these dramas show that they are not merely entertainment, right? So, but they are nothing but the mirror. They are nothing but the mirror of what human life. Sometimes they are uplifting, right? Sometimes they are disturbing. Sometimes they also come with the both at once. So uplifting is called as a make you fun, make you humorous. Sometimes they are also known as a disturbing. You find out a tragedy, you find sad, you find out sorrow, sadness, isn't it? And sometimes you find out that they carry with the happiness and sadness. Got my point? So in that case, let's talk about the first one. The first one is known as a tragedy, right? So if I talk about tragedy, we will go with the first one, which is known as a Christopher Marlowe's written Dr. Faustus. So what Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus point out. Now, Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, please do remember the first play which we are discussing. So, Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus is one of the greatest examples of Elizabethan tragedy, right? So, it means during the Elizabethan period, right? So, Dr. Faustus, or called as the Christian Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, was written, right? So it tells the story of whom? It tells the story of Dr. Faustus, right? So who is Dr. Faustus? Now, he is none other than a brilliant scholar who means dissatisfied with the human knowledge and turns to necromancy, right? And sells his soul to the devil in exchange for power and knowledge, right? We generally know that what necromaniac. Necromaniac, generally known as a what? Means a dead body, connecting to the dead body. So the play actually ends with a damnation and eternal suffering. Eternal suffering is called as a permanent suffering, right? So in this particular play, did you understand? We talk about the Christopher Marlowe's written Dr. Faustus, and in which we understand that Dr. Faustus is a brilliant scholar, but the problem in him is called as he believed that human beings are means lack of knowledge, and he is not satisfied with the knowledge. So he turns to necromancy and sells his soul to the devil in exchange for power and the knowledge. So it seems like he is hungry for the knowledge, isn't it? Hungry for the power. So the play ends with nothing but a permanent suffering. So in this play, you find out the tone. Tone means what? Tone means the way you present your statement, the way you made a statement to others, isn't it? Here you would find out the tone of Dr. Faustus is called as a solemn. Solemn means called as a peaceful or in a very calm, right? So, but at the same time, you would find out grave, right, and fearful, isn't it? So, when we go to the Dr. Faustus, the book, we find out that several acts are given. Out of them, you would find out Act 5, Scene 2, right? Act 5, Scene 2, where Dr. Faustus delivers his final soliloquy, right? So soliloquy means called as a final speech. And in that speech, why? Now because the clock strikes midnight. As the clock strikes midnight, so he made his final soliloquy. He knows that his hour of death and the damnation has arrived. Who knows that? Dr. Faustus knows that what? His hours of death and damnation came out or has arrived. He requests, he pleads with the time to slow down and with God to show mercy towards him. Right. His words are, filled with desperation and terror. Good, Dr. Faustus, isn't it? So you would find out there is a line where it is stated, "Oh Faustus." There is a line in the book of Act 5, Scene 2, where it is written, "Oh Faustus, now has you but one where art to live, and then thou must be damned perpetually." Right? All these archaic means old English language is written. So, O Faustus, now hast thou but one where art to live, and then thou must be damned perpetually. It indicates that the tone creates a sense of pity. Pity means sadness and fear. So the emotion that Aristotle considered central to tragedy. So this is the tone that indicates nothing but the tragedy. It's not like comedy, which ends with reconciliation, right? It's not with the same as means comedy, you can say. So tragedy ends in a what? Tragedy ends in irrevocable loss. Irrevocable loss means you are unable to speak it again. You are losing that speech, isn't it? So we talk about the tone, and in this tone, we find out the tragedy is present in Dr. Faustus. Right. The another thing is the way language is a point out. So when you talk about the language, what do we find out? Now we find out the language in the play, right, which is nothing but a highly uh, poetic and elevated. Highly poetic and elevated. Poetic means called as a huge, means poetic form, and also means the level is nothing but high, isn't it? The lines are full of classical reference to Christ, classical reference to Christ, Lucifer, and Greek mythology. So languages, Christ, Greek Greek mythology, and Lucifer. Lucifer is called as known as a king, right or not? So the imagery of the body dissolving into water drops, right? Of stars moving backward, of mountains falling. So these are the things which are showing both despair and grandeur. Despair means sadness, miserable, at the same time grandeur is in a huge manner, right? So this elevated style, this high, luxurious, lavish style suits the tragic form, right or no? So where the protagonist means, what do you mean by protagonist? The meaning of protagonist is called as the main character. So here you would find out the main character is a man of a high learning, high knowledge. So who brought down by his own ambition. Because of his own ambition, what happened? He fell. He brought down, isn't it? So that is what you would find out. The languages of Christ, Lucifer, and would find out that the Greek mythology, isn't it? Then the next one is we understood the tone, we understood the language. Then we talk about the setting. When you say setting, the setting is Faustus study. The setting is Faustus study, but its atmosphere is far from ordinary, right? It means you are living in an ordinary house, but you have a lot of books, research, everything is going on. So it is also midnight time. So the tolling of the clock, and the imagined presence of devils create a dark, right? So the darkness creates nothing but the someone's present. Who is he? It's none other than devil, right? So it is enclosed, means clothes surrounded, some suffocating world, right? So it's not like comedy set in forest or drawing rooms. It's tragedy that are often staged in closed, tense environment that reflect the characters in our disturbance, in our turmoil, isn't it? So that is what the setting in the story called Dr. Faustus. Then you also find out the next one is called as a how does tone, language, setting effect on audience, right? When I say that what these are the qualities effect on audience. Audience feels for fosters that vested potential. What do you mean by vested potential? That's called as a unused ability, right? You have the ability, but you are not using it in a proper manner, right? So that is why it is known as a vested potential. And it's also known as a fear of the damnation, right? That awaits anyone who overreaches, right? So the play Dr. Faustus ends not with the laughter, but with the silence and moral reflection. Moral reflection. So that's what you draw from the tone when you talk about tragedy, isn't it? The second one is called as a comedy. And when I say comedy, I find out that what an example of comedy is called as a William Shakespeare's written As You Like It. As You Like It. It's a very interesting comedy. So if you talk about that, Dr. Faustus exemplifies or giving the example of the height of tragedy or the severeness of tragedy or sadness. So William Shakespeare's As You Like It represent what? Represent the joyous. So joyous possibilities of comedy, right? So here also you would find out many of the acts are given, and in this particular play you would find out Act 2, Scene 7. Act 2, Scene 7. So where you would find out the exiled duke. Exiled means what? Now somebody who have been forcefully uh, thrown outside of the kingdom is known as exile. So here, the exiled duke means called as a prince, right? The exiled duke senior and his companions, means his friends, are in the forest of Arden. Arden is the name of the forest, right? So it is a place that far removed from the corruption of court life, right? Now, this indicates that how the life in the forest and how the life in the palace. So the palace is filled with the corruption, which is indicating lavish, luxurious, and lost. Everything is connected. But whereas you talk about the forest, it is a freedom, right? And it is a happiness, peace, everything is connected, isn't it? So the author of William Shakespeare pointed that it is here that Jacques delivers the famous speech. What is that famous speech? That all the world is a stage, and we are the actors and actress. We play the role, right, and leave the place. Isn't it? That is the big means. You can say that what a famous speech. The who made it? It is made by Jacques. 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 Now, this is something called as a very important part that we need to understand. So, when William Shakespeare wrote this particular play, As You Like It, so he made the tone. What kind of a tone he made? He made the tone which is a light-hearted. Light-hearted. So the tone is light-hearted. The tone is very clever, witty, and also the tone is reflective. So it reminds you something, isn't it? So even though Jack's speech, all the world is a stage, and we are the actors and actresses, and we perform the role and lead the place or lead the stage. So Jack's speech has nothing but a serious philosophical quality. Serious philosophical quality. So why? No, because it is framed with a pastoral comedy. It is placed with a pastoral comedy. Pastoral, you understand? The meaning of pastoral is indicating to the you can talk about two meaning. One is called as a rural, and the other one is called as a church. Right. So it is the pastoral comedy that celebrates love, freedom, and harmony. So when you say love, freedom, harmony means peace. Right. So the forest of Argent, where you would find out Jacques made the speech. So it is nothing but a space of play. The setting was made in the forest, and it is the space of play where you can say that lovers meet, and disguise create confusion. Disguise means what? Hiding your originality. That create confusion, and eventually everything ends what? Everything ends happily. Everything ends happily in marriage and reconciliation, right? It means through understanding. So in that case, if you talk about that act uh, 2 scene 7, that indicates nothing but the means, idea relevant to the comedy. Tone of the means, author is nothing but a comedy based, isn't it? And the kind of a language the author used here is known as a playful. The language is a playful, filled with a puns, witty exchanges. Puns means called as some kind of slang remarks, witty exchange, clever words which are exchanged between two, and pastoral imagery. Pastoral imagery means it seems like rural image, isn't it? So Jacks describe human life as a play. Human life as a play with 7 stages, isn't it? You must have read the 7 stages of human being, right? So the author stated that what Jacks described that what human life as a play with 7 stages, and it is a metaphor. Metaphor means, what do you mean by metaphor? Metaphor is known as a direct comparison. It is a poetic device. It is a the play presents a metaphor that is both humorous and also thought-provoking. It makes you to think, what does Jack wants to convey here, right? So, unlike the elevated, solemn language of Faustus, so the kind of a language is not relevant to the kind of a language of Dr. Faustus, right? So here you would find out Jack's speech is nothing but indicating some kind of a thought-provoking and humorous or fun, right? So the comedy here mixes reflection with a laughter. The comedy here mixes with what? A reflection with a laughter, right? So this is known as a language, right? So the third is known as a setting. When you talk about setting, where does that play occur? The setting of the forest of Arden. The setting of the forest is Arden, or forest of Arden. That is nothing but a very important place. Unlike Dr. Faustus, setting is a dark study room. Dark study room. Now, do you see the differentiation? Right. It is a place, dark study room, and it is a place where you would find out forest. Right. So the forest is open, natural, and liberating. Like I said, the forest represents what? Open and natural and liberating. That's called as a freedom. Whereas the dark study room surrounded with a clothes, and you find out very despair and you can say that lacking confidence, isn't it? Losing its charm. Those are nothing but the examples or setting of the tragedy. Whereas you find out forest, which is love, happiness, liberating, harmony, all the things are present, isn't it? So therefore, it is known as a mixes with a reflection of laughter. Mixes with a reflection of laughter. So even in this part also, you talk about that means the setting symbolizes that escape from rigid social structures. So you don't want to live in the society where the people have a double standard, rigid in nature, isn't it? In comedies, you would find out that setting often allows for disguise, mistaken identity, and playful exploration, right? So, which you would find out all, which all contribute to the comic spirit. Got my point? Then, if I talk about means, as you like it, puts an impact on the audience that audience enjoys laughter, wit, and the resolution of conflict. Resolution of conflict means means there is a conflict, but that conflict is solved, right? So it's not like tragedy which ends in death, but comedy ends in what? Joy and social peace or social harmony. So therefore, you would find out there is a huge difference between tragedy and comedy, like the huge difference between the Christopher Marlowe's written Dr. Faustus and William Shakespeare's written As You Like It. Got my point? Then we talk about the third one, which is known as a Tragi-Comedy, right? Please do remember, while we are discussing these are the things, we are discussing tone, then after, what do we say that? Language, and we talk about settings. Isn't it? Similar to that, when you talk about tragicomedy, which is also known as a sarcastic drama. Sarcastic. What do you mean by sarcastic? The meaning of sarcastic is called as a criticism. right? Somebody criticizes to others, right? So tragi-comedy, or we call it as a political satire, political means, story, right? So here you would find out the example which is given. It's called as a Vijay Tendulkar's written the topic called as a Ghasiram Kotwal. Right. So the author stated that moving from Elizabeth, England to modern India, we find it Vijay Tendulkar's Ghasiram Kotwal is a different dramatic form altogether. So it was written in the year of 1972, which was written in the year of 1972, that called as a Ghasiram Kotwal, which was written by Vijay Tendulkar. So it was written in 1972. The play combines elements of you can say folk theater. Folk theater, you understand? So we say that what folk means referring to the people. People's theater, like we say folk tale, local golf, right? So here when we say that folk theater, it's called as a people's theater, isn't it? So folk theater with a modern political criticism. Modern political criticism. So this story tells what? The story of Ghasiram Kotwal. It tells us a man who becomes the Kotwal. What do you mean by Kotwal? The meaning of Kotwal is called as a police, right? Police chief. The head of the police is known as a Kotwal, right? So Kotwal is a Hindi term which is used. So police chief, and he was the police chief of Pune, right? So under the patronage of what? Under the patronage. Patronage means that called as head of Nana Pandavanavis. Nana Pandavanavis, isn't it? And Nana Pandavanavis, who finally turns into a symbol of what? Oppression and cruelty. Oppression and cruelty means what? Oppression means torturing somebody, physical torture or mental torture to somebody, and cruelty. Right? This is what Ghasiram Kotwal's story. Right? The story is, indicating about political criticism. If you see that the tone in the story, the tone is highly satirical, highly criticism. That shifting or moving constantly between what? Constantly between humor and brutality. Humor means called as a happiness, and brutality means cruelty, right? So in this particular play also you would find out Act 1. In Act 1, the chorus of Brahmin, chorus means called as a when group of Brahmins, they make a kind of a chant, right? And they sing a song. So the chorus of Brahmin who actually mocks themselves. Mocks themselves means who criticizes themselves, isn't it? So how they criticize? They say that we are Brahmins of Pune, we are Brahmins of Pune, willy and clever, willy and clever. If you want the favors, bribe us with silver, right? Now, do you see the kind of a line which have been pointed? We are Brahmins of Pune, so willy and clever. So if you want the supports or favors, then what do? Bribes us with the silver, right? So at first this may seem funny. Doesn't it look like or here like a full means silly? But it also exposes what? It also exposes deep corruption, right? Deep corruption and hypocrisy, because Brahmin's job is to do the puja part, right? But here, and what we voluntarily give them as dakshina, right? So, but at the same time, when the Brahmins are demanding, right, it seems like they are the willy and they are the clever, and they are. And here it is indicating that they demand that if you need favor, so bribe us with the silver, right? So at first you may find out that it is humorous, but it also exposes that how deep corruption and hypocrisy was going on or is going on, right? The laughter soon gives way. The laughter soon gives way to uncomfortable as violence and abuse of power dominates the play. Right. So that is what you would find out in the Ghasiram Kotwal, which is written by Vijay Tendulkar. So here also we find out the language. Um, Vijay Tendulkar, who uses a mixture of folk idioms. Folk idioms means that the kind of short saying. Idioms mean short saying, which were told by the people of past, right? And that's what Tendulkar uses in the play. Uses a mixture of folk idioms, songs, dialogues that reflect both the tradition and irony. Tradition and irony. So the language is not elevated like Christopher Marlowe's or Dr. Faustus. So language is not that, not purely witty, clever, right? So like Shakespeare also, but the language is something which is called as a biting, sarcastic criticism, and deliberately it seems like theatrical, right? Dramatic, theatrical. So the use of chorus songs and dances also creates a distance that forces the audience to think critically rather than passively enjoy. Right. So we enjoy directly when we talk about Vijay Tendulkar's Ghasiram Kotwal. So here you find out the setting. The setting is 18th century. Vijay Tendulkar's written Ghasiram Kotwal, so that played in the theatre, which was showing us the setting of 18th century Pune, but the stylized stage with a chorus makes it a universe or universal. So the mix of historical and folk elements gives it a unique quality. It's not like the forest of comedy or the study of tragedy. So it's not taking one side, forest of comedy or study of tragedy. Here the stage is both a public and political, where the corruption of power that plays out, right? So in this case, in this particular tragi-comedy also, that effect on audience. But when you say that, the audience laughs a lot. The audience laughs a lot, but means uneasily. The humor, the happiness, or the fun that exposes social and political realities, isn't it? That makes the play a tragi-comedy, isn't it? It's not like pure comedy. It doesn't result in also peace, because if it ends with a peace, then it will not be called as a tragi-comedy. If it only refers to the comedy, it cannot refer to tragi-comedy, isn't it? So it's not like complete tragedy, complete comedy. It doesn't end in a what sad alone, pity alone. So instead, it mixes both, leaving the audience with a discomfort and also reflection to it. So then we talk about the next is, so understood, we talk about tragedy by giving the example of Dr. Faustus, written by Christopher Marlowe. Second, we talk about the comedy. We talk about As You Like It, written by William Shakespeare. Third, we talk about tragi-comedy, which is written, which is nothing but giving the example of Vijay Tendulkar's Ghasiram Kotwal. Right. The fourth that we are going to discuss is called as a farce or comedy. Farce or comedy. So again, in this also we find out the example of Anton Chekhov. Anton Chekhov written The Beard. The Beard. B-E-A-R, The Beard. So in this particular play, this is also known as a one-act play. So Anton Chekhov's one-act play, The Beard, is nothing but a comic farce written in a late 19th century, right, in Russia. The play begins with what? The play begins with a grieving widow. Grieving means what? That's someone who is crying, someone who is suffering because her husband died a long ago, right? So, and this widow, whose name is called as a Popova, right? Popova, who promises that she will never marry. Who promises what? Who promises never to remarry, right? So, and enter Srimov. Enter Srimov. Not Smimov actually, we say that Smimov. 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 So, who is Smimov? Means a creditor demanding repayment of her husband's debt, right? It means the widow whose name is Popova, right? So, who decided that means after her husband's death that she will never marry again or she will never remarry. But at the same time, the character enters in our life is known as a Mimova, right? Or Smimov. So, who is actually nothing but a creditor, right? What is the job of the creditor? Now, job of the creditor is to collect money, right? Whom he has given the money, isn't it? So, he demands payment of her husband's debt, right? So their quarrel escalates. Their quarrel means what? Here's Mimov and Popova. So they do have a kind of a quarrel, and their quarrel escalates into insults, challenges to a duel, and unexpectedly turns into understood. So here, that is what the kind of a story is all about. And here you will find out how did the author, means Anton Chekhov, means used the tone in this. He points out the tone in an exaggerated manner. Exaggerated means what? Excessively praising. The tone is exaggerated, the tone is belligerent or quarrelsome, and the tone is a comic also. Right? You find out happiness. So Smimov and Popova shout, insult each other, and even prepare for a duel. Right? So, but the absurdity means ridiculous, right? But the absurdity of their quarrel suddenly turning into romance and makes what? Makes the audience laugh, right? At the unpredictability of human emotions, isn't it? Now, you must have seen many movies where you find out at the beginning how the heroine shows her anger towards the hero. Even hero also shows anger towards heroine. But when it goes and you would find out in the climax, they both have a good affair. They both started or they both fall in love to each other, right? So same thing happening in Anton Jacob's Richard the Beer, right? So in this particular text also, the author used the language which is nothing but a everyday use, isn't it? So everyday use language, colloquial, and full of contradiction. Because what you say, I contradict to you, right? So it is not like Marlowe's elevated speeches of, or you can say Tendulkar's satirical chorus, right? Because we know that Christopher Marlowe's language is nothing but called very witty, right? And archaical and Lucifer type. So, but in the case of Tendulkar's language is a satirical chorus, right? So, and here we talk about Anton Jacob's language, which is everyday and colorful and full of contradiction. Jacob's characters speak like ordinary people. Jacob's characters, it means Jacob introduces many of the characters in his play, and they speak like ordinary people who caught in a bad situation, ridiculous or a foolish situation. Their quarrels, however, are heightened for comic effect. So when they make the quarrel, that shows nothing but the comedy for the audience, right? So, and finally, when we talk about the setting, we find out the setting is a simple drawing room. The setting is a what? Simple drawing room. In when like you find out in a Christopher Marlowe's setting. So it's a one room, the one dark room. If you talk about As You Like It, you find out Jax and the Duke So their setting is referring to the forest, isn't it? So in the case of Anton Chekhov's The Bear, here the audience laugh at the absurd quarrel, right? So the setting is a simple drawing room in Popova's house, right? So the ordinariness of the setting contrast with the exaggerated behavior of the character. Exaggerated behavior of the character means what? Like you are a creditor and another one is a widow, right? So both means how they use the language, how they present their appearance, how they behave to each other. That shows exaggerating. That doesn't happen in a normal situation. So it makes the comedy more, ridiculous. It's not like the forest or political stage. Uh, the domestic space means what? It happens in someone's house. The domestic space becomes the scene of what? Ridiculous conflict, isn't it? So, for which you would find out means the audience here laughs. The effect on audience is called as the audience laughs at the absurd quarrel and is surprised by the sudden romantic turn between the two characters. Right? It is not like tragedy. There is no fear or pity. There is not like a criticism. There is no discomfort. It is pure farce, right? So it means to farce means what? That called as entertain the audience, isn't it? So in that case, if we compare, these are the plays with one another. So we find out that these four plays, we can see clearly that how tone, language, and setting that differ across genres, isn't it? Like we say that a tone, when we find out Faustus is a solemn and fearful, which is a tragedy. When you talk about As You Like It, which is a witty and light-hearted, which is nothing but comedy. When you talk about Ghasiram Kotwal, written by Vijay Tendulkar, it is a tragi-comedy that shifts between humor and the cruelty, right? So similar to that, when you talk about Anton Chekhov's The Bear, which is, point out the tone called farce, right? Or entertain purpose. It is exaggerating and quarrelsome, but at the same time harmless. Got my point? So that's the tone among these four. Whereas the language, you would find out means Dr. Faustus' language is elevated, poetic, uh, As You Like It, called as a witty, lyrical language with puns. When you talk about Ghasiram Kotwal, mixes with the folk stories, with satirical lines. And when you talk about Anton Chekhov's The Bear, which uses everyday colloquial speech. And similar to that tone, language, setting, we find out that Dr. Faustus means takes place in a dark, closed study room, whereas As You Like It unfolds in the open, liberating forest in forest of Arden. Then Ghasiram Kotwal is a set in a what stylized political puns with a chorus, and the beer occurs in a simple domestic drawing room. That these are known as a setting, right? So, likewise, if you talk about these are the drama that effect on the audience. So, audience find out Dr. Faustus' play is nothing but creating sadness and fear. At the same time, As You Like It, that creates laughter and peace. Ghasiram Kotwal's is also provoking uneasy laughter and reflection. And the fear that produces pure laughter at ridiculous nature. Isn't it? Got my point? So these four plays are excellent examples to understand dramatic genres, right? So if you read them side by side, you find out that how the same medium drama can serve very different purposes. Same medium drama can serve very different purposes. Like you can say, to warn, to warn is a tragedy, to entertain is a comedy, to satirize, tragi-comedy. Then to ridicule is called as a farce or entertainment. Got my point? So in that case, the comparison also sharpens what means awareness of how tone, language, and setting interact. Right. Serious tone with elevated language, serious tone with elevated language, hi-fi language in a closed setting naturally produces tragedy, isn't it? A playful tone with a witty language in an open setting produces comedy. So, a shifting tone with a satirical language in a political setting produces tragicomedy, and an exaggerated tone, excessively praising tone with a colloquial language in a domestic setting that produces nothing but entertainment or farce. So, therefore, drama becomes what? Drama becomes not just entertainment. Drama becomes not just entertainment, but a study of how artistic choices shape human response. Got my point? So, finally, if I talk about the conclusion of the idea, it's called as a drama, whether tragic or comic. It is a reflection of a human life, right? And Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus shows us the dangers of ambition, right? So, through the solemnity of tragedy, Shakespeare's As You Like It offers joy and reconciliation to the lightness of comedy. The Tendulkar's Ghasiram Kotwal mixes humor with horror to expose corruption, creating a modern tragicomedy. So, Anton Jacobs' The Beard uses farce, entertainment, or to entertain us with the absurdity of what? A ridiculousness of human quarrel. Right. So together these plays define or demonstrate that the difference between tragedy, comedy, and tragicomedy lies in the tone, language setting, right? And that each form has a unique impact on the audience, right? So tragedy leaves us in awe and fear, surprise and fear. So comedy leaves us with a laughter, and tragicomedy leaves us both amused and disturbed. Farce finally leaves us laughing in the huge ridiculousness of life. So, in the end, I can say that drama reminds us that life itself is a stage, right or not? Sometimes happiness, sometimes sadness, sometimes peace, sometimes satirical, right? And sometimes absurdity, true, foolish, illogical. Got my point? That's